Hello everybody, my name's James, and for the benefit of those listening back to the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream, where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. To timestamp this, it's just gone past 4:30 p.m. UK time, and I've been let out of jury service on bail for the rest of today, so this stream is a little bit earlier than originally planned. As per usual, I'll go through questions in order of submission. Repeat/similar questions may well be skipped. I've got nothing particularly to announce because, well, I haven't even got a case yet, so I've done sod all day. So I'm looking forward to sorting some football. FPL Borat is first. Says, hey James, who would you bench out of Rodgers and Reinders? I feel like it should be Reinders. The Spurs defense is better, but it's hard to do it after watching him haul last weekend. This is one of them where I want to do my usual, mate, and is there nobody else? I guess there's a chance Reinders is your cheapest attacker, right? Benching Rodgers against Brentford don't feel great either. I think the home advantage, I would play Reinders of the two, mate, but that's a tough one. To be fair to FPL Borat, he does ask everyone to smash a like. Yeah, that'd be truly appreciated. Smash the sub button as well if you're not a subscriber to Planet FPL. Hasselbank's wins says, thoughts on AI in football. Will we see AI sim matches for teams when preparing for opponents, identifying weaknesses, set pieces, etc., and the optimal strategy to win with the players you have? And then it says podcast. I definitely don't think there's a podcast in that at the moment, mate. But I don't think it's something we could rule out the top clubs looking towards in the future, right? Everyone's going to go to AI. But someone's going to replace me in this seat. It's going to be a robot in about 5 years, I think. So, yeah, I don't think we can be too surprised if AI spots weaknesses in the way that a team defends corners, for example. I saw a video yesterday, it's completely non-football related, of someone giving like a basic kind of like 2-sentence description to an AI of what they wanted for a song, and it spat out like the whole lyrics, the song, the vocals, everything. Like, it's a bit scary, this, isn't it? So yeah, AI, I guess, will probably get used for nearly everything eventually. Hopefully for VAR one day soon as well. Aaron Hill says, hi James, start Julian Araujo or Diouf? Shane Smith played against Liverpool and Konsa got sent off, so now forced into this dilemma. All the best. So Bournemouth played pretty well Friday night, and they were unlucky to lose, and I think it will probably be the same team, would be my guess at the moment, subject to the team news. I would add the caveat that, as discussed with Neil Grover on Correspondent Week, we didn't plan to discuss it, but just talking about Bournemouth's options for opening night at Liverpool, and this was obviously before they bought Diakite, we did come to the conclusion that for that one particular game, Smith might play because of his added experience, and that it might change again afterwards. So it might. But I think ultimately Araujo could well be the one-pointer. That said, what are we expecting off Diouf? Well, as you saw at the weekend, maybe not a lot, but also he very nearly scored. So Diouf will play. There's no doubt about that. I would go with Diouf, unless there's something from Mandoni Iriola that gives you an indication that Araujo would start instead. I think it would probably be the same Bournemouth team personally. CMP says, hi James, my original plan was bench boost 2. Now I'm not sure. Benches Dubravka, Estev, Van der Ven and Dewsbury Hall. What do you think? And if I do it, should I transfer Van der Ven to Dorgu or another 4.5? So the small issue you've got at the moment is obviously with the double Burnley defence, now will feel like the right time. What I'd ask you to do is go back and have a look at game week 8, use a planning tool such as FPL Team, and just have a look ahead towards game week 8. Now, inevitably, you're going to make some transfers. You may even have a wildcard plan really soon. But I think for those with something like that, a double Burnley defence, if you feel uncomfortable this week, you're probably not going to transfer these guys out. They're going to stay there. They're going to be first choice subject to injuries. So if game week 8 might just land better without planning for it so much, then maybe look at that. For example, Van der Ven that week has Villa at home. It's not a great fixture, but it's better than the one this weekend. Dewsbury Hall has a home game. It's okay. Ultimately, CMP, you're going to be defined there probably by whether Burnley keep a clean sheet or not. And I would suggest that Burnley will probably be in a much better situation by game week 8 than what they're in now, just in terms of hopefully they're going to do some transfer business over the next 10 days or so. Also, have a listen to tomorrow's Clash of Correspondence. I'm recording with Jack Toner and Spencer Barrowman tonight. That is our COTC feature, which is Burnley against Sunderland. So recommend that. Get the Burnley impression on that tomorrow in terms of what Jack thinks as well. In terms of Van der Ven to Dorgo, try and avoid these sort of transfers, I think, if you can. I wouldn't look at United's next fixtures and think this is a wow period just yet. So I wouldn't force that at this stage. Unless you were truly thinking Van der Ven was just a 1 week pick. In which case, maybe hindsighty, but maybe bench boost was the way to go last week. See what Jack says. But I think the main thing there is just have a look at game week 8 as a potential alternative. Martin says, hi James, thoughts on Rodgers as an FPL asset going forward? Source on speculation, his position has changed a bit. A low XG versus Newcastle. Is he still a good pick? Thanks for answering. So, look, Villa weren't great, excuse me, against Newcastle. So he played a wider role more off the left, but we've seen him occupy that position quite a lot. And Villa's wide players don't play like, orthodox wingers, say like your Mohamed Kudus is, for example. Like, you got Rodgers and McGinn either side of, say, a Tielemans, and they're very much encouraged to get into half space areas where Rodgers is most dangerous. So definitely wouldn't read too much into that. Until the injury scare, Rodgers had been like a constant for me. The hardest fixture of the first 7 is gone. So there's nothing wrong with Morgan Rodgers as an option going forward. I wouldn't be racing to it, but if you own him, I'd be very, very content with that. It's not impossible. He's on my free hit this week, mate. There's a couple of solves that I'm looking at in terms of the players I want, where it lands where I've kind of got 7 million left for a midfield on, and therefore he comes under consideration for me. But almost, I would add to that almost like as last choice. I don't think I will go there. If I owned, definitely be keeping, no doubt. 333 Marson says, hi James, with no City assets, is another week to assess Pep Roulette a sensible option and roll? It's fine. Also depends on what you want to get rid of. I wouldn't be smashing up my team suddenly because Haaland got 2 against Wolves, because that shouldn't come as a surprise. Obviously, Rangers' performance will obviously have massively alerted last week. So too maybe Ait-Nouri, Trafford being in gold. Or I don't recommend people go to Trafford till the transfer window closes. I think in terms of Pep Roulette, that's probably not going to be helpful for you in the next couple of weeks, because with City playing just the 1 game a week, I don't think we should expect the team this Saturday to be much different from the previous week. And the same for game week 3 at Brighton. Now, then once we hit game week 4, that period then becomes dependent perhaps on what Champions League games City have around about that period. And there will be a consciousness that City nearly pissed the Champions League up the wall last year and nearly went out in the group stage, right? So they'll want to avoid that. But there's also, how can I put this? It's better to lose a Champions League game than a Premier League game in the opening half of the season. It's reality, okay? So I still think, for games like Manchester United game week 4, Arsenal game week 5, he's going to pick close to what his first 11 is, but you may get more variations from that point. So I don't know if what happens next is necessarily going to help you. I don't think Pep will go too far away from what worked very well last week. They may come up against a team that plays a system that's quite similar, albeit stronger this weekend. So I wouldn't fret if you haven't got. That said, I'm going to free hit with 3 of them. AC Mannion says, tempted by Tarkowski on my free hit too, but Brighton are hard to predict sometimes. Yes, they are. Reckon Everton might park the bus, or are they a no-go defensively until we see improvements? So you could not look at James Tarkowski Monday night and think he was like a no-go. I was watching the game thinking, should have still been there probably. Also, understand that it was a makeshift back line. Michael Keane's obviously very experienced, but they had to play James Garner at left back. We don't know at this stage if they're going to have to do that again. Maybe Mikalenko, we thought was going to be close. Maybe he'll be back for Sunday. That'll be a little bit better. Also factor in for Sunday the emotional consequence of the game for Everton. It's the first game in the new stadium. They will be desperate not to lose it. So I don't mind that. Again, I've looked at a couple of options. To be honest, more with Pickford, purely because I think for this particular week, I would prefer Munoz than Tarkowski at the same price, for example. So it would probably be a no for me, but I mean, he was so close really to a big haul on Monday night. So he's perfectly reasonable makes. If they keep a clean sheet, his floor is almost higher than 6 now. But it probably is, isn't it? It's not to say he's going to hit it every time, but in terms of an average, when Everton keep a clean sheet, on average, he's going to get more than 6 points, isn't he? Without even necessarily needing a bonus. And if you top for DEFCONs and they keep a clean sheet, suddenly you very quickly can be looking at 11-pointer without him even getting an attack in return. You get that on top, you've got the Dan Ballard. So I'm not going to tell you no, definitively don't go there. If you fancy him for a clean sheet this week on free hit, mate, crack on. Hiride Mujumdar says, hey James, best captaincy option between Salah and Palmer for this game week. For this game week, it would be Palmer. Couple of reasons for that. One would be Tino Livramento's performance against Salah in the Carabao Cup final. And also Newcastle's structure to get Dan Burn out there physically as well. They may set up similar, they may set up slightly differently, but I think just as a duel, Livramento is a great 1v1 defender against Salah. The bigger reason is West Ham United. That's the bigger reason. Harry Baker says, hi James, for Esteval was our best attacker by some margin against Palace. I would like him to start versus West Ham. Any chance this happening in your opinion? Cheers. Is there a chance? Yes, absolutely. But I think there will be caution and he would more likely still be used as a substitute at the moment. Because I think he's probably one that once he gets in, there's every chance he's going to stay in. I think anybody who watched that game Sunday, and that includes me, was very impressed with his cameo appearance. And I said this in pre-season that I thought he would probably get involved quicker than people thought. When Clayton and I did the Clayton and James show last week, I nominated him as a tip for Young Player of the Year for the forthcoming season. So I think absolutely keep an eye on him, keep him close to your thinking, but I, at the moment, wouldn't think that he'll start just yet. That would be my take. But would it be a surprise? Also, no. Aaron Hill says, this isn't a panic move, but one plan I had before game week 1. I know it's early, but thoughts on -4 to do Wirtz and Fulkrug to a Dingra and Gyökeres, with the latter also taking the armband. Much appreciated. So what I'd say to that, Aaron, is like, what's your alternatives for captaincy this week? So if you've got like a Palmer or Watkins, that's still perfectly reasonable. You may have a City asset. You may have an alternative Arsenal already in place. Totally get the appeal of Gyökeres this week. But this is where we try and preempt here. So what happens this weekend when he performs similar to he did at Manchester United, if obviously, and afterwards you're like, yeah, that's not right. I'm not ready. And now he's got Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle in 3 of the next 4, and Forest is not a great game for attacking players either. Are you then in a position where you're like, shit, I'm going to be taking another -4? So I think ultimately, Aaron, if you've got real strong opinion on Gyökeres' captaincy, fine. But I'm not hugely keen on that personally. And also, I'll preempt, I wouldn't be going Watkins to Gyökeres at this moment either, unless you truly believed Gyökeres was the outstanding captaincy and you didn't have good alternative options. AT17 says, hi James, what do you think of a Bruno Fernandes game week 3 triple captain differential if we see him frequently attacking in game week 2? Him frequently attacking in game week 2 doesn't mean it will be frequently attacking in game week 3. Similarly, if he's not frequently attacking in game week 2, doesn't mean he won't be in game week 3, factor in the opponent. So my plan at the moment would be to captain Bruno Fernandes in game week 3. And with Bruno, we've said this a lot, one return could really be beginning to kind of lead in towards double digits for him now. So on the face of it, fine. Triple captaincy though, I would still want to be going ideally with Haaland or Salah at an opportune moment, ideally. And I think those opportunities exist. And they certainly will do sort of in the December period without too much planning for it. So I would say no at the moment. But you have added the word differential. And I do intend to captain him as it stands in game week 3 myself. And that's probably even irrespective of whatever I see from him this weekend. Hiradi says, should I start Dubravka or Sells this game week? Already am playing Murillo in defence this week. Again, I wouldn't be factored. It's hedging my bets. If someone's the best choice, go with that. I always say that. Close one. Narrative for you here. a deal maybe gets agreed for Eze after Palace's game tomorrow night. Maybe he doesn't play. Very much would increase, excuse me, the appeal of the Forest defensive assets. If you were ever going to play Dubravka, though, it feels like this week. My instinct at this moment, before I've spoken to Jack and Spencer, is that I think Sunderland will probably win at Burnley this weekend. And if that's the case, I think probably sells. I think probably just about sells would still be the way to go. Going to be interesting atmosphere, that one at Selhurst Park Sunday. James Brennan says, hi James, would you do Saka and Fulkrug to Gyökeres and Reinders from -4? Spooked on the Saka left wing rumours and need to bin Fulkrug. Could otherwise just go Fulkrug to Strand Larson or Evan Nilsson for free. Oh, I'll tell you what, James, you got to get me up to date with these Saka left wing rumours, mate, because that's news to me, mate. And I don't think we've seen anything to suggest that that would happen. Madueke came on Sunday, played left wing. Saka stayed on the right. I would be stunned, frankly, if Bukayo Saka played on the left on Saturday for Arsenal. Stunned. Don't foresee that being a thing, personally. If someone's reported that they've seen Arsenal in training lining up this way, then it's something I haven't seen, and I bear that in mind. But I would be very, very surprised about that, mate. I would not be selling Bukayo Saka this week if I owned. What was the point at starting with him? Selling for Leeds. Did Gyökeres impress you that much? I get the Reinders idea, but I wouldn't be Saka going at this point. If you look, we're going right, game week 3, the Leeds fixture's gone right. Now I want to go Saka to Reinders, and I want to move different players. So you're saying bin Fulkrug, go Fulkrug to Watkins in 3 for Villa's good run of sort of 5 fixtures or so, which still exists at that point, and it's for free. I'm like, all over that, no problem if that's what you want to do. For that, no, it's not for me. Murphy says, hey James, debating for Bruggen versus Dubravka and Esteve versus Anderson this week. Would you start one, both, or neither of the Burnley lads? Fulham only kept 5 clean sheets last year, but it is a potential hauler, I would say, for Anderson, in the sense that, the Defcons, I'd probably expect to hit them at the weekend. But there's every chance Esteve does as well. I think for Bruggen versus Dubravka this week, ask an Evertonian, they'll tell you play for Bruggen. I'd be pretty sure of that. And Everton were toothless Monday night. And again, there's the narrative of first game at new stadium, etc. I probably would go for Bruggen of those two. Esteve versus Anderson is close, though, I think. Very close. I would probably, I know I just said about not hedging your bets, but I think if I was sitting there with both and it's that close, I'd be thinking, I'm going to bench both, and then I probably will pull out the clean sheet one day. If you were ever going to use Esteve, it's a week like this. I don't think we sit here and think Fulham keep a clean sheet on Sunday, do we? I probably would go Esteve. Again, let's see what Jack says. I'll pose some of these questions towards Jack on Clash of Correspondence that are similar to some of these. Sudge is in. He says, guilty or not guilty? Guilty. Always guilty as charged, mate. On bail for now, mate. Henry Maluish says, plan was free hit 2, getting Arsenal, City and Bournemouth. I have 0 of all. However, in week 9, I'll have no Salah, Brentford, and no Palmer, Sunderland. What are your thoughts on game week 9 free hit in this scenario? So don't love that. Don't love that because I think most of the teams that have a really good game week 9 fixture have okay, I think I might be back. Sorry for that, guys. It looks like the system that runs the graphics got booted out because the Wi-Fi here kicked out for a second or so, and it kicked everything back off. So apologies. Right, let me get back to the question, which was about a free hit, wasn't it, in game week 9? So Chelsea have a good run of fixtures from there, so I wouldn't be too keen on that. In terms of others with good fixtures in that week, I think, again, there's good fixtures either side. So Arsenal's at home to Palace, good fixtures before and afterwards. West Ham are at Leeds, good fixtures before and afterwards. Wolves are at home to Burnley. They've got Sunderland the week before. Leeds themselves play West Ham. They've got Burnley the week before. Newcastle at home to Fulham. Good fixtures either side. It's, as said, it's the start of a good run for Chelsea. Burnley are at Wolves, the neighbours. They play Leeds the week before. So I don't love that in the sense that that's more like a wild card period. I think people have kind of been identifying two kind of periods to wild card unless it was early. And the earlies are fine for those who want to do it. But it's that period. We spoke about this on the Chip Strategy pod last week. There's a roundabout that period, sort of 7 to 9. City good in 6. Arsenal then 7. Chelsea back around in 8 or 9, depending on probably how Forest are doing. And then there's the next swing in 13, Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle, etc. So not massively keen, just because I think many of the teams you'd be looking at on free hit have got good fixtures before and afterwards. So it would probably be a no from me on that basis. Now I have to try and find the question. There is a chance here, guys, because I got kicked out, that I may have lost a load of your questions, and I can only apologize for that. I think that's what's happened to me, is I've probably lost a load of questions here, so I'm really sorry. Please don't think you've been blanked on purpose. The original question I had looks like it's gone, and that means many others probably have as well. So sorry, guys. Please tag me on socials and I will happily answer your question now. You are not being blanked intentionally. Kevin Owens Guy says, evening James, hello mate. Elliot says, I own Solanke and Marmoush. Solanke to Evanilson / Sesko. Marmoush to Cunha / Bumo or Roll. Yeah, I mean, they're probably going, mate. So wouldn't go Sesko just yet. Evanilson really good, obviously, this week, and it's a better run for Bournemouth now the Liverpool fixture is out of the way. Preference still slightly Cunha over Bumo for me, but I think there's been more of a split opinion that I've seen in terms of the community this week on that. Sean Kelly says, you laughed at me on Saturday when I picked 3 Spurs defenders. I did that for my own sanity, Sean, and I congratulate you. FPL Vert says, hi James, which team would you back for last man standing, please? Championship fixtures. I don't know the championship fixtures, mate. I'd have to have a look at them, which is really as if I haven't wasted everybody's time on this stream enough. Birmingham. There you go. That's my shout for this week. Birmingham City, if you want one. Mr. Tools says, top 3 free hit must-haves. No such thing as a must-have, but I will tell you, I'll be open and honest, I've not made my decisions yet in terms of free hit, but I can say there are 5 players that are near certainty for me. Gabriel, Saka, Reinders, Haaland, Semenyo. Those 5 are near certainties for me. And I think the development of the Havertz news today means I will highly likely go Gyökeres as my third Arsenal one. And to be honest, that would just be Gyökeres or Saliba. And it's not a versus one versus the other. It's a structure of other players. Because I'd still want... There's 5 forwards I'd like to have this week. Watkins, João Pedro, I own. So I'm going to sell them and they're going to return. Evanilson, Haaland and Gyökeres. Mr. Feeper99 says, how do you think the Vissa Isak situation goes now? And do you think Isak will get reintegrated back in if he has to stay? Look, I mean, that was pretty strong and quick and good response, I think, actually, from Newcastle United following Isak's post. I think it was on Instagram. I still have an inkling that the transfer will happen, but don't feel as strongly about it as I did 24 or 48 hours ago, is what I'd say. So, you know, Newcastle kind of made their stance pretty clear. They're not going to get bent over on this. It does sound like there are terms that Newcastle would be prepared to do a deal at, but it doesn't sound like Liverpool have been anywhere near that at this stage, and we don't know exactly what that looks like. Vissa, I'm sure, probably will move. I mean, Brentford are absolutely right to turn down the offer they've had from Newcastle today, because they probably get more out of it. So, and there might be others. I mean, could Arsenal, subject to how this Havertz news is, could Arsenal suddenly look at Vissa as a backup to Gyökeres? I mean, if touch wood, it's not. But if Havertz was an ACL, Arsenal may look at that sort of deal, possibly. FPL S&D says, Porro versus City or Anderson versus United. I would go Anderson, personally. And I know Pedro Porro scored and kept a clean sheet at the Etihad last year. But in all likelihood, we wouldn't expect anything from it, either defensively or offensively. I spoke a couple of weeks ago about, after the Super Cup final, of not even necessarily believing that even if Porro plays wing back, that's even definitively better for him than playing fullback. I think he had more I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I think he had more crosses, more successful crosses into the penalty area. Might not have been successful, might have just been crosses. More crosses into the penalty area than any other player, I think, in game week 1. And I certainly recognise the opponent. But then I recognise the opponent in terms of what I'm saying here. We can't keep getting results at the Etihad, guys. I would be playing Joachim Anderson. Rob Passy says, on free hit this game week, thoughts on Rodgers and Watkins, or downgrade Watkins to a non-playing 4.5 and upgrading Rodgers to Bruno? Yeah, Fulham doesn't scream, but again, there's a scenario I've looked at where it's like, yeah, it's 9 million available for a midfield player. So naturally, I think at that point, you think Bruno Fernandes, you probably landed on that same, probably nearly exact same draft that I probably looked at, probably thinking, yeah, he fits in. It's fine. Look, Bruno's picked for consistency, so it would be sod's law the week that I don't have him that he goes off and hits above the consistency line, right? Rodgers, Watkins has said both under consideration for me. I think the Villa and the Chelsea players are okay to go with because you are targeting what you have seen so far from Brentford, West Ham. They are both at home this time. We might see something different, but I still think that's okay. Whereas City, Bournemouth and Arsenal assets, I knew that I'd want. Whereas Villa and Chelsea assets look opportunistic because Brentford really struggled last week and West Ham clearly have vulnerabilities at the moment as well. FPL SND I've covered. OP Talent says game week 1 went for Bruggen and Adarabioyo, not Sanchez and Goodmanson. Game week 2 played for Bruggen or Dubravka. I think for Bruggen. And Porro Estev feel the need to make a back for Bruggen points and shouldn't bench Porro. Struggling on this one. The best advice I can give you is not even on the decision here, but it's you can't change what's been, mate. It's like flipping a coin. Oh, it was tails last time, so it's more likely to be heads next time. Game don't work like that. So make the decision not on what's been. And you potentially sound like you might be on tilt there. And that's liable to go wrong, to give you a poker reference. I would go Stev, personally, from the two. Jake G says, good day, James. Where have you settled on the Arsenal free for your free hit, or still waiting some further news? Appreciate what you do, bro. I got to skip, Jake. Thank you for the question because I feel like I've literally just answered that. Z says, hi, James. I really don't see Vert starting versus Newcastle midfield, do you? So, David Hunter's obviously, as you should know by now, is obviously joining the Planet FPL team, and we're going to premiere a new podcast on Friday called The Weekender. And also, David's a Liverpool fan, so we are definitely going to discuss this in more detail on Friday. My instinct right now is that Ekateke won't play, which I know is going to scare a few. That's my instinct at the moment. Let's see, and I think that would just be a one-off scenario, by the way. Let's see what David thinks. It does feel like any of the attacking players, other than Salah, could miss out. That's how it feels. I can visualise a box build up similar to what Liverpool did when they won at Manchester City, where Wirtz and Szoboszlai players like 10s, Gakpo and Salah wide, McAllister and Gravenberch behind that. That's what I can visualise in terms of the strategy set up for that. And I think draw Newcastle out. I also think there will be a real big consciousness to do something different from that Carabao Cup final where, let's be honest, Liverpool got well beat by Newcastle. So I think Wirtz probably does start, but definitely there's doubt about it, and it wouldn't be a huge shock if he is the one that misses out for this one particular game. Discussed that on Monday. N says, good afternoon, James. Question regarding Eze if he joins Spurs. Do you think he's a massive rotation risk when Spurs playing difficult fixtures, big six, etc., with Frank favouring a 3-5-2, Kudus up top? Again, I spoke about this a little bit on Monday. It's like it's so obvious that Tottenham will play, and as I said then, probably 5-3-2 more than 3-5-2. But they have also suggested that going forward, that will depend more on personnel. So I think in terms of the amount of games that Tottenham would use this system in, we are looking at fixtures at the moment that would be like Liverpool, maybe even just away. City, maybe just away. Arsenal, maybe just away. Chelsea, maybe another one. Maybe Newcastle as well. But I don't think too many others. So it's going to be in the toughest games. So if he did get rotated, something further down the line potentially to consider. But one of the things I spoke about was that I think it's a personnel decision at the moment because we're weak offensively. We haven't got enough quality. Now, what if Eze joins and Tottenham are trying to do business for other players? We know that the interest in Savinho is completely separate. There's been links with Aliuche at Monaco, whose name I've completely butchered. Apologies. So Tottenham are looking for more than just Eze if that gets over the line. And I think at that stage, let's just use the Savinho example because we know him. But if Tottenham, I don't know, say played Chelsea in game week 10, right? And it's at White Hart Lane, admittedly. But let's just hypothetically imagine that it's at Stamford Bridge. Let's say that Eze, Savinho, Kudus, Richardson, Solanke are all fit. I don't think that he's going to play 5-3-2. I think he'll probably play 4-2-3-1. And I think we saw enough of Brentford last year and how they set up in the biggest games to know that this is ideally what he would wanted to do. Now, there wasn't really pressure on results for Brentford last year, so I accept that, right? Clear of the drop. I weren't too far off Europe in the end, but no kind of pressure to get the results. So acknowledge that. But I think if the personnel's there, don't get fixated to Tottenham will play 5-3-2 in the toughest fixtures. Because if Tottenham played Man City this weekend, 4-2-3-1, we are looking at like Sarr as the 10, and Sarr may still play as a 10, by the way, but in this system, and Johnson on the left, right? And it's fine, but it's weaker, isn't it, right? Solidify the back line, build from there. If suddenly you're putting Eze into that, maybe it just becomes 4-3-3, flatten midfield 3, Eze and Kudus either side rather than a 4-2-3-1, Solanke or Richardson up front. So the answer to your question is yes, possibly, but no, not really. I think Eze will play nearly every game for Tottenham if the deal happens, and I'm certainly not counting any chickens that it is because it's by no means done as far as I can tell. George Houter says, hey James, you football genius. Gyökeres or Watkins on Wildcard. Shocking game week 1, scored 34 and overreacted and hit Wildcard. Okay, right, well, we've done that now. So again, we can't reverse it. On Wildcard, it would be Watkins. Straightforward. Just far better fixtures at the moment. So Watkins. Daniel Mackey says, not FPL related, but do you agree that it's refreshing to have a couple of newly promoted sides that look like they can hold their own? Hopefully big relegation battle this season. Yeah, and I said this on one of the bits earlier this week as well. I hope Burnley win on Saturday. It's nothing against Sunderland because I kind of would then, I hope Sunderland win the week after, right? But yeah, if we can get through the first 2 weeks and all the promoted clubs have won, I think especially for Burnley this week because the fixtures afterwards are, yeah, they're bad. If they don't win this weekend, you're like, okay, it's going to be a while, quite possibly. So I hope from that perspective, kind of in terms of what you're saying, yeah, I hope Burnley win this weekend. Yes, we don't want to see the same 3 teams going down every year. We don't. Asil Salem says, I'm a huge fan of the James and Clayton show. It's the Clayton James show, just so you know. Would love if you added a section about a specific season from the past or a tournament. I love hearing you, James, talk about football in general. Thank you, mate. Look, we don't know, as covered as part why David's joined us, we're not sure how much we're going to have of Clayton once we get into September. He's not leaving the team or anything. He's just got his own life commitments that are going on. So we've rolled with it at the moment while he's here in England with us. He'll still be about on bits, but it's going to be difficult for him to have the commitments at the moment. So if Clayton and James show is not something that's going to be semi-regular, then I'll probably throw some nostalgic stuff onto Patreon because that's the sort of stuff that I'll do, mate. Anish and Nakra, who to start, Sells or Dubravka? Game week 2, already starting his dev. I did answer that for someone else a little bit earlier on, my friend. Thank you for the question. BHH67, James, would you start Diouf or Van der Ven? Cheers, mate. Diouf of the 2. Mark says, any thoughts on whether Lewis or Nunes will emerge as Pep's preferred right back? I wouldn't even say that it is necessarily one or the other because I think Johnny Pringle was right to highlight in correspondent week that the right back position is still a weakness area for City. So it will come down to more the preference of what Pep wants to do in system rather than a preference of one or the other because they're not really comparable players. So it's ultimately what Pep wants to do rather than a versus B. If you ask me now, I would say once Rodri's back, my instinct on that would be Nunes. But I don't have any confidence in that statement. Russell Glenn says, hi James, would you play Sells or Dubravka? Thinking if Eze doesn't play, I was going for Sells. Cheers. Yeah, it's kind of covered elsewhere, but thank you. Bellon says, I'm here to brag about starting 4.5 Josh King. Second game week in a row. Well done, mate. Cole Slipper says, hi James, who do you think Newcastle should buy to replace Wilson Isak? Who do I think Newcastle should buy? I think there's a danger that Newcastle make a mistake. I use an analogy of, again, it might have been on our Patreon Q&A, about Tottenham when they sold Berbatov and Kane and them panicking. And Pavlyuchenko wasn't a bad player, but he wasn't a great player. And it was a panic. He got to the point, it was like, get anyone. And there's a danger that for Newcastle. I actually think with the way that they play, I actually think Nicholas Jackson would fit in quite well, personally. And I think he'll be available. And I wouldn't be surprised now that Manchester United have got the Sesko deal done. I wouldn't be surprised if that door is open for Newcastle when he ends up there. Next up is homegrown FPL. Hi James, Truffer, Senesi or Bafade Diakite for concert on bench boost this week. I think so. This is buying rather than free hit. So I think free hit Diakite Truffer is close. I think if you're buying one, I would go Truffer, just because it feels like the capability of could be really good, might not be, but could be really good. So if you're buying and investing this week, I would say Truffer, mate. Carl Miller says, will Premier League teams sweep the European competitions this year? Look, Palace have got a great chance in the Conference League. Look at what Forest are doing with their squad. That's going to make them pretty competent in the Europa League. Villa, I would expect to go deep in that competition. And then I think Newcastle Tottenham will find it very difficult to get to the really kind of latter stages of the Champions League. But the other four are all really capable. But I think it's fair to say Barca, Madrid, PSG, Bayern Munich are all going to be in and around that as well. So I don't think we could say sweep, right? I would be surprised if there were 3 English European winners. I would probably be more surprised about that than if there was none. Daniel Mackey says, have you got a rough free hit draft in mind for week 2? Yes, I do. I'll discuss it on Friday's pod. Mr. FIPA 99 says, does Gyökeres get locked into your free hit now Havertz is out injured? I wouldn't say locked in, but I would say it's probably likely. But I think it was probably likely anyway. Marina says, hi James, will you have Haaland or Salah on Wildcard Game Week 2 team? If I was wildcarding, I think now, yeah, I would. I said this on Monday's pod. I would. I think at this stage, I would probably just go Haaland at this moment. And save. You're going to save 2 transfers on the path, aren't you? 2 transfers for other things. So I would, at this moment, yeah. That's the emergence of clarity on your likes of Reinders. There was clarity on Anderson anyway. By the way, for Elliot Anderson owners, like Douglas Luiz is going now. Don't worry about his minutes. It might impact him a little bit in terms of the amount of set pieces he takes and stuff. It ain't going to impact his minutes. Elliot Anderson is too good of a footballer. So yeah, probably Haaland, Marina. Cho Pickle says, all on top form, rank Foden, Palmer, Saka. The reverse order to what you've written them. Anas Zenehom says, start Fulkrug or Joshua King. Oof. Fulkrug, I think it's got to be in it. I think. Yeah. He's way more likely to score, isn't he? He is, reality. So Fulkrug, they could lose 4-1 and he scores, right? My friend from across the river who's Staffis, thank you, put it Staffis. I'm going to try and remember. Sorry, buddy. Hi, James. Who would you bench out of Murillo, Nico Williams, 8 Norrie? Definitely not. Senesi. Don't think I can bench some attacker, Rutter / Anderson. No. Probably Nico Williams from that. Probably just about. Mark 505. Do a backflip for the lads, James. Listen, mate, I can't even do a roly-poly anymore, mate, with this back. Northern says, would you worry about planning a bench boost while on Wildcard 2? No, I wouldn't worry about it. I'd possibly, now that Game Week 1's gone, I'd just have an eye on Game Week 5, that it might naturally land based on some of your picks. So just have a little eye on that, maybe. That's one discussed as a possibility on the Chip Strategy podcast last week. So yes and no is the answer, but I wouldn't be wedded to it. I wouldn't be like, I've got to pick this player so I can, for example, bench boost in week 5. Like it's a month away technically, isn't it? But you can set it up that, okay, yeah, this looks okay, let's pull the trigger. Savory 11312 says, should I play my triple Leeds defense or my triple Spurs defense? Vicario +2 defense this week. I mean, that's an intriguing one, isn't it? It's the Tottenham one. I tell you what, it's the Tottenham one. Just better threat of scoring, I guess, from set plays and the like, right? Greg says, hi James, if Isak stays, what do you think of a Gakpo, Ekiteke, Haaland draft? Something we can discuss going into game week 4, right? If Isak doesn't go there, then Ekiteke becomes a brilliant option, I think. So, but I with Newcastle and Arsenal in the next 2, that decision doesn't need to be made now. If I was on Wildcard now, I would not be going Ekiteke. For the same reason I didn't go for Ekiteke last week. Now, if the window closes and I'm wildcarding in 4 and I'm looking at Burnley, Everton, I'm like, okay, yeah, now I want to punt this. This allows me to maybe just set with Haaland and leave Salah and go Ekiteke, Gakpo. That both of them might feel more secure at that stage, and then Van Dijk, Frimpong, whatever you fancy, Kirkes. At the moment, no. David Fawn says, hi James, hope you're well. Start Gakpo or Bowen of the 2, I think. At least with Bowen, talisman, and you'll get the minutes. Like, again, it can't be a huge shock if Cody Gakpo doesn't start Monday. Someone is missing out from that Liverpool team because there's no way Ryan Gravenberch won't start if he's fit. Andrew Parker says, if not on free hit, would you still transfer in Arsenal assets such as Wirtz to Saka or Anderson to Saliba? Although tough fixtures, the DEFCON for defenders is appealing to set and forget. So Saliba obviously hit it in game week 1. Gabriel didn't. Gabriel poses a better attacking threat most commonly. No, I'd be letting it go. I wouldn't have been investing. And there's a case to say maybe something like Liverpool to Arsenal specifically, knowing that Liverpool got a tough come, and you go, okay, I'm gonna accept this and take this. And the more money you've got at the back, the easier it would be to carry one of them. So for things like Newcastle away or Liverpool, where you might even be in a position to bench it. But no, I probably, generally speaking, would not be buying Arsenal this week. Flacker says, hi James, love the content. Do you think Frank will set up with 5 at the back versus City? Probably, but I also think that that's obvious and therefore he might not. Planting Seeds says, Jim Bobby Brown balls, free hit this week. Cunha and Bumo going straight in. United looked really good against best defence in the league and didn't score. I had that last bit. Marcus Lewis says, I'm on a free hit. Front 3 without Haaland. Semenyo, Evan Nilsson and Rodgers out wide is a good pick. You can take Haaland on, by all means, because you could still have, as I said earlier, something like Watkins, Gyökeres, Evan Nilsson, and then that allows you to like comfortably put in Saka and Palmer if you want. So you can do it. I won't be taking Haaland on this week personally. Semenyo, Evan Nilsson, preference Semenyo, just because I think there are, again, more alternative forward options than midfield options I like. Rodgers out wide, a good pick. Yeah, I mean, we spoke about Rodgers early on, was one of the first questions. Shiver19 says, I have Sells, Dubravka, and Murillo Estev. Which 2 should I play in your opinion? Other defenders, VVD, Porro, Ronaldo. I think this one's a little different to some of the other ones in the sense, yes, Sells, and I'd go Murillo as well. Because Murillo very capable of DEFCONs in a fixture like that at the weekend. Furious Johnson, mate, did a video myself and gave you guys a shout out. Not worth much yet. Thank you very much. And then found out I'm in a league with your Leeds man, Ed. So shout out to FPL Rhinos too. What are the chances? I don't know, mate. But good luck with your own channel and your content, mate. Daniel Mackey says, how's the lunch at jury service? Don't know. I went to Nando's, mate. Well, I'm working till late tonight because I'm recording with Jack and Spencer tonight. So I needed some fuel to last me through the day. So, yeah, when they said, right, piss off for an hour and 20, I went, yep, that is enough time for Nando's for me. Thank you very much. So I don't know, Daniel. Darren Long says, hi, James. I'm really contemplating a game week 2 wildcard. Excuse me. 39 points all out, and I want to avoid going deeper into my mistakes. Rogers, Frimpong, Gyökeres, Kelleher, Pedro, Palmer, Wirtz, all on the chopping block. If you weren't planning to do it now, I wouldn't do it now, and I'm guessing you wasn't. Those guys have all largely got pretty good fixtures next week. So, I mean, the only off-putter for me on free hitting this week was that so many of my players blanked last week. I'm like, I don't look at it that way. I'm selling players as hauling. I'm more looking at going, these guys are too consistent. The returns will come. So, why did we pick these guys in the first place? That's all. Just have a check. Have a check. What was your original wildcard plan? FPL Marshall says, hi, James. Who to cap? Salah, Palmer, Bruno, Watkins. I like them all, but love none. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I understand what you're saying. From that lot, probably Palmer. I think probably from that lot. Lemon says, hi, James. I took a risk on a 4.0 defender when I could have gone for 4.5 from the same team. I would like to start said defender this week. Should I just rectify it, even if it requires a -4? Sorry, I'm not sure I follow. You took a risk on a 4.0 defender when you could have gone for a 4.5 from the same team. You'd like to start that defender this week. Should I just rectify it, even if it requires a -4? Are you talking about taking a -4 for a 4.5 defender in game week 2? I'm not quite sure I follow the question, but the answer to that is going to be no, mate. At 17, says, hi, James. If you had to choose a player that is less than 1% owned in each position that is not bench fodder, who would you pick? Blimey. I mean, I'd have to have the statistics in front of me. Jeez, whiz. I don't know what Emi Martinez ownership is, but there you go. There's a shout for you. Must be pretty low considering he was suspended last week. Let's go Alderate for defenders, midfielders. Someone really lowly owned. Josh King. None of the high price players are lowly owned in the attacking brackets. Forward, there ain't going to be a good forward under 1% owned, is there? Be like next to nobody, mate. Let's pick a lowly owned one. Evan Nilsson, I suppose, probably. I don't know what the ownership of these players are. I wouldn't know. I've really not paid much attention to ownership at all. JS says, hey, James, congrats on your great Spurs start. I mean, had we not won on Saturday, probably be problematic. Should I sell Frimpong to Cucurella? I get the temptation on that. Wasn't this always a scenario? It's just something to think about for the future. Wasn't this always maybe a scenario that if you didn't return well against Bournemouth that you'd feel this way? And understand that. It's not helped by Cucurella picking up bonus on Sunday against Palace. Fixture's okay going forward for Cucurella. But I do think he swings back around fairly quickly for Frimpong as well. I would probably avoid it at the moment. Just in the sense of, can I understand the temptation? Yeah, just will that transfer be better used for you on something else by rolling? It feels more that to me. The Liverpool's right back returned really well as a substitute at St James's Park last season. James Stock says, hi, James, would you fancy Gordon on a free hit? It's probably going to be a no for me, but I've done a piece today speaking about my free hit, and he does come into the conversation. I know one of our Newcastle patrons, Jack, is quite high on his prospects. I think the conclusion I've come to it is I quite like him as an option for this week. I wouldn't be at all surprised if he'd returned, but I probably would be surprised if he hauled. And I would rather chase the bigger returns this week personally. So it's probably going to be a no from me, but I don't hate it at all, actually. Bellon says West Ham will bring in Matheus Fernandes by the end of the game week and will get on front foot against Chelsea. Well, they'll need to register him by about 12 o'clock tomorrow because the game's Friday night. Dan Raleigh says, hi, James. When do you reckon Eze will get done? I'm not answering that at all, mate. I do anticipate he'll play for Crystal Palace tomorrow. Martini Furtado says, thoughts on the Trossard contract? More money, not longer. Post Havertz injury may be a necessity. as he can play centrally. Are there any realistic options for Arsenal to cover Kai in the middle? There is a possibility here that Arsenal knew that there was a problem to Havertz, and it explains it. Whereas yesterday, I think that was a really strange one. Even Clates was like, I'm not sure about this. But if the Havertz injury was known, then obviously, I know it's something they've agreed quite quickly, then I can understand that to put off. There was a possibility he was going to go. So it seems like a strange one. An increase in contract for a player who's not first team without an extension feels, let's just call it unusual. Mehendi says, greetings from Indonesia. I'm determined to hold my free transfer, but this could mean I have to play one of Dewsbury Hall and Fulkrug. Which one do you reckon? Of the two, play the 9, mate. If Fulkrug receives a good delivery in the box, he's dangerous. Ashish says, bench boost 2 of Dubravka, Estev, Rodon and Krupi Jr., James. Get it out the way and 0 money spent on bench plus no transfers. Wildcard 13, free hit 6, or if I transfer in Haaland, then later, thoughts, thank you. The same as what I answered to somebody else earlier, even more so in your circumstance, game week 8 potentially. So that's when Burnley, Leeds play each other. And who knows, by that stage you might have a Krupi starting if something happened to Evan Nilsson. So I'd be holding off, and just naturally it might hit better in game week 8. Nixie713 says, who to captain if you don't own Saka or Haaland? Watkins, Salah. Don't feel comfy with Palmer. It probably would be that though, as I'd answered for somebody else. Chewy FPL says, thoughts on Watkins captain. It's similar. Dan says, all right, James, I have Williams, Cucurella and Anderson starting, and Romero currently on the bench, but tempted to start Coty. Faults. He's a 1 or a 0 pointer this weekend, mate, I would imagine. Blanca says, and die to Rangers. I can definitely understand the appeal of that and wanting to get that done. Yeah, I don't mind that. Edsy says, I think no Haaland or Salah was a big mistake. We could all do hindsight, my friend. Lars Foran says, Watkins to Gyökeres now with Havertz out. No, as transfer wouldn't be doing it. Tom Sleeman says, should I bench boost with Dubravka, Dewsbury Hall, Joachim Anderson, Estev? Yeah, I like that one more than some of the others I've seen here. Planting seeds. Yeah, thank you, mate. Sorry for those. I'd appreciate those who put comments in the chat when the stream froze. Jack, he's next, or he was next, and I lost him in the stream as well. Jack and Whistle says, hi, James. I have Anderson and Aris as my 5.5 mid. Saw Rangers was going up in price, but thought I would want Aris when the Wolves fixtures run. Faults. Well, the problem is he needs to get in the Wolves team first, and it doesn't seem clarity that that's definitively going to happen at this moment. So, I would be extremely tempted to make that move personally. But also, you might be in a position where Aris is your 8th attacker, and then, okay, maybe we can wait a little bit for a bit more info. Jay Mullet says, predictions for Burnley. Sunderland has said, probably slight edge for Sunderland. Let's see what Jack and Spencer say on COTC. Dan Relly says, hi, James. When do you think Eze will get done? We've been here, mate. Big L. Thoughts on Casado as DEFCON mid. Would have been top for DEFCOs last season. Already has 5 points first game. Not keen. And I said this, I think the first pod we did after I come back from holiday, that I said that I thought Casado would be the best in terms of DEFCONs across midfielders. It's potentially blocking you off of Cucurella, Palmer, and João Pedro, or maybe it'll be Estev, or maybe Adarabioyo plays regularly, or maybe Sanchez becomes a great option, or maybe Garnacho becomes a great option when he inevitably joins them. It's potentially blocking the free Chelsea. Otherwise, if you played for someone else, yeah, fine. But then I'd probably look at that at the moment and think, well, I'd rather just have Anderson. Or for 0.5 cheaper, I'd consider Tyler Adams at Bournemouth for that reason. Won't do as well, but 0.5 cheaper. Tom, I've done, sorry. BHH67, would you start Van der Ven or Diouf? I think I've done that one. I totally understand a few people may have put questions back in. Jeff Montgrain, hi James, thanks for the great content. Need to decide who to start this week between King and Fulkrug. Yeah, Fulkrug, my friend. Sean Cadian, I've done very similar to that. Dorgu. Kanajin says play Goodmanson or Diouf. Diouf. Dash 30. I'm torn on captaincy. Palmer, Salah or Watkins. Something telling me to cap Watkins. Talk me out of it. Love the concept, man. Thanks. No, I won't particularly because I think it's pretty close. So if you really fancy Watkins, I'm fine with that. As I said, slight preference for Palmer from those. Lemon Seamus says, on Isak, do you think Liverpool would be considering Isak's conduct, not training, social posts, etc. as a negative? Sure, they were no interest in selling, but if Madrid came calling in a few years, I think it's an elite player. It's a needle mover. Liverpool will be going, this is the player that we wanted. It's every chance here, by the way, that he's acting the way he is with encouragement from Liverpool. Yeah, that's a possibility. Jay Mallet says, is Solanke a hold or sell? He's a sell, mate, because at the moment, Richardson deserves to keep playing. I'd be very surprised if Solanke starts on Saturday. Nixie713, and therefore, if he doesn't start this Saturday, how are you going to be in a position next week to think he's starting? Unless Richarlison's injured. Nixie713 says, captain if you don't own Saka or Haaland. Kind of covered off. Thank you, FPL Uproar. Thank you, HM10 as well. Jared1993 says, hi, James. Currently on bench boost 3, free hit 4, triple captain 6, and wildcard 8. So is Palmer to Cunha this week a viable move or just hold off and take 2 free transfer game? It's a hold off, mate. It's a hold off. I don't know how we could look at this week and think that Cunha is definitively better than Palmer. And you'll give you more, if you want a bench boost in 3, right? It's going to give you more flexibility about what you may need to do next week. Najek Sinklavek says, is Kudus still shit? Kudus was never shit. Kudus is on fire, mate. Can't start a fire without a spark, mate. And Kudus is on fire. If you're labelling that in terms of some of my FPL comments, I know some people are sometimes difficult of hearing. I've said he doesn't look like scoring. Yet again on Saturday, he didn't look like scoring. We shouldn't be surprised, as I said, if he does quite well against Burnley. I also advised on Monday's podcast to sell. He does not look like scoring goals. I hope he tears it up, mate. But he does not look like scoring goals. And ultimately, for a 6.5 midfielder, we can't expect 2 assists every week. But love the player. So impressed with him so far. OP Talent says, if Tosin is fit and leaked to start game week 2, worth a bench boost of Dubravka, Porro, Tosin, also Goo. I'm tempted to say to you, like, can something look better in a different week? That's what I'm tempted. Goo's not going to start. He might get an appearance this week, but he's not going to start. Is there a better opportunity somewhere else? There might be, right? Right, I tell you what I'm going to do, because there's way too many questions left. I'm gonna do some real quick fire stuff. So I can see down to Jack and Twissy. No more questions beyond that. I'm going to answer everything that's left very quickly because I understand it's not your fault, Wham, with the stream, etc. So we're going to do a long one here. Adam says, no, he's not. In a second, Adam. Gavin Richardson says, hey, James, as an outsider, what do you think of the mind-numbing Sky Sports talk shite wank fest over the Isak saga? I'm so bored of it as a Toon fan. Nothing to add, mate. Agree. Adam says, do you agree with the notion that signing Havertz when Arsenal did has overall set them back X amount of years and dented their chance of winning titles? Interesting discussion I saw on X. I also think Havertz has been amazing for them in many big games, particularly towards the start of last season when Odegaard was injured. Narratives. Rahul says, can Slot drop Chiesa after scoring an important third goal on Saturday in the next match? If not, who will make space for him from Liverpool front four apart from Salah? There is absolutely no chance that Chiesa starts that game on Monday night, mate. And you're not dropping someone that wasn't in the team anyway. He scored a goal as a sub. Don't particularly think Slot even wanted to use him. Bellis says, I think if Liverpool drop anyone for Gravenberch, it'll either be Gakpo, Wirtz or Ekiteke left wing, or Frimpong, Szoboszlai to right back, as seen in one of our pre-season games. Brooke McCandler says, would you ever take a job as a presenter pundit on somewhere like TalkSport for the right price? Listen, if the right price is being offered, the answer is yes, mate, because I've got a boy that I need to feed and give him the best life that I can. Tag says, explain why most think Cunha is a better option than Boomo. It's a good question. That was my instinct in pre-season. I think part of that was thinking there's a chance here that he ends up as the 9. I think there's a possibility, and we haven't seen it yet, that we might see Boomer at wing back in certain games. That feels unlikely when Diallo didn't even start against Arsenal at the weekend. Boomer won't have the volume probably of set plays in the way that he did at Brentford. And essentially, you're moving from a talisman to being within another group of, like, it's difficult to say at this moment whether Bumo, Cunha, Sesko, Fernandes, like, who would be United's top point scorer, right? We wouldn't have had much doubt it would be Bumo at Brentford. So I just think Cunha, in terms of positioning, being, I think, more central ultimately, he probably appeals to people. I think he really caught on the eye. I said on Monday actually some concerns about him, like off the ball. I think in some other games coming forward for Manchester United, where he's not like a definitive starter necessarily, even for every single game. And I also think that applies to Bumo potentially as well. So I'm not super high on either at this moment, but I'll be very honest. Yeah, it would be Cunha for me of the two at the moment if I was investing. And I'll be honest, Tag, I can't give you a great answer for why on what I saw at the weekend. There's something instinctive in that, I think. And I felt that as soon as the pricing come out. Because if Bumo had been 8 million at Brentford, it'd been like, oh, I want that again, I think. And yet 8 million at United, I was like, I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe it's a feeling like I need to see him do returns. But that's also the same for Cunha. So I'm not sure. I think it's a good question, Tag, and I don't have a great answer. So I'm not going to give you one. KGE says, hi, James. How many teams to double up on your FPL team with players would be optimal strategy risk-wise to not too much eggs in one basket? For example, Saka, Gyökeres, Rodgers, Watkins, Palmer, Pedro. I don't have a set opinion on that, mate. I really don't. If it's like there's an incredible 11 that we could get together from the 4 best teams and it all fits in and they're all amazing assets, do it. I wouldn't like restrict myself to thinking I've got to have 11 talisman. Every season's different. I wouldn't have a set answer for that, mate. There are certain weeks you feel like, oh, I want treble, like Arsenal this week. I want treble Arsenal this week. Usama says, hi, James. Verbruggen or Sells to play this week. Already have Williams in my 11 to start. Just about Verbruggen, I think. I must have a username. Start Brennan Johnson or Dewsbury Hall. Well, I know which one will start. If Tottenham play a back three, Johnson might not even see the pitch at all, mate. Michael Thomas, I've answered similar for others. Thank you for your question. Leon says, James, I've made a stinker on my transfers. Took a -4 to remove Frimpong and Bowen for Ekiteke and Milenkovic. Would you free hit to rule it out or just crack? I mean, I can't answer that because I can't see the rest of your team, mate. Listen, the transfers aren't terrible. Would I've done it? No, but again, you can't. There's no point changing what you've done. I can't answer the question, mate, because I don't know what your team looks like. Daniel Mackey says, do you think Josh King stays in the Fulham team or they just ease in Smith Rowe in? I think on top of that, we have to say, look, transfer window's open and they might add. But I know even the Brighton people at the game were quite impressed with him last week. The bits I saw, he's a super talent, as Lewis told us on Correspondent Week. So I think he'll probably stay in. I don't think that's definitive like every week, but yeah, I think there's every chance he will. Certainly if I was buying a 4.5 midfielder at the moment, I wouldn't think twice about him. Daz F90 says, Ekiteke will be over 10 million by the end of the season if we don't get another forward. He won't be, mate. I'll bet a lot of money on that. Rav Pankania says, hi, mate. Could you help me with a benching headache? One of Gakpo, Wirtz, Bruno, Rutter, Palmer, Bowen, Strand, Larson, Watkins. So to bench one from that, I guess it comes down to what you think on the Liverpool selection, because obviously there's a strong chance that one of those two might not play. So I'd say Wirtz, just for this one specific week. Cess48 says, plan is to bench Booze having picked the Bravco and Estev. The constant red card has made me use a transfer. 4.5 budget, sideways move to cash or move elsewhere. Richards, Dorgu, etc. Just be wary that Nottingham Forest have been linked with Matty Cash, but have been linked with another right back later on today as well. I tell you what I would do if I was going to do that. I would strongly consider going for Alderete at Sunderland and putting the bit of money in the bank. I'd strongly consider doing that. Thank you, Neil. Renac says Verts to Odegaard. Wouldn't be doing that. Creed 87 going rogue and captain Jokeres against Leeds. You like? I think you find that for those who own it, probably won't be that rogue, mate. Derav says also one more benching, please. One of Porro, Murillo, De Kuiper. Porro, based on what I watched Everton. FPL Torek says, hi James, my plan before FPL starts was to go with Ekateke and one captain and then move to Jokeres. Should I do that still? Without that, we'll go with Jokeres in 7, free hit free. Thanks. And if that was your plan and you're still happy to do it, you'd still do it. The question kind of there would be like, so what's changed your mind on that, right? Is it Ekateke's performance? Ultimately, you might be sitting here and Ekateke's not in the team by the time they come around to good fixtures again, right? If the Isak deal happens. So if that was your plan, I'd do it. Daniel says, would you keep Solanke? No, as covered for someone else earlier. Hedgie says, Spurs Man City prediction. City win 2-0, 2-1, something like that. Arabia says, triple captain Saka. If you wanted to triple captain Arsenal player, I covered this on Chip Strategy podcast last week, then this probably would be the week to do it. So if you have you're an Arsenal fan, wanted to put your triple captaincy on an Arsenal player, then you probably is the week to do it. For MEFC says bench 2 out of these: Reinders, Strand Larson, Estev, Porro, Murillo, Nico Williams. Estev and one of Porro or Williams. Probably Williams. Hedgie says Liverpool beat Newcastle, in my opinion. Gravenberch being back will help them defensively. Russell Glenn says, hi James, interested to know if you're keen on Alderete. Don't know that much about him. Cheers. That's just covered, and we will cover again on Clash of Correspondence, and I covered him on Monday's podcast as well. Annie Rudwa says bench booth with Dubravka, Estev, Porro, Sarr. Yeah, don't mind that. Or mind you, which Sarr? I read that as Ismaila Sarr. If it's Pap Sarr, no. If it's Ismaila Sarr, yeah. Benayoun says, hey James, how's it going? What are the chances Ademola Lookman comes back to the Premier League in a Spurs shirt, maybe? Probably not, but I am aware he was reportedly going to Inter Milan. I've heard that's off. So yeah, wouldn't be surprised if Jens back in our league. Wouldn't be surprised. And here's Jack's question. Says, cheers for the previous answer, mate. Aris is my 8th. Also, would you start Anderson or Porro? Anderson. Right, I'm going to rattle these off because I've done a shit stream for you. Bucks Chew says, would you rather be too hot or too cold? Good question. Too hot, I suppose. Frank Verlinden says, good name. He's going Rico Lewis over 8 Nori in Wildcard. A good call. Gives me 1 million more to spend. Do you think it's too much of a risk? Too much of a risk for me, mate. Uros Milicevic says, hi, James. Who would you start? Porro, De Kuiper. Sorry if this has already been gassed. I can follow the live stream. No problem, my friend. De Kuiper would play. Jan W says, 1 to bench out of Stack and Fulkrug. Again, I would go with the striker. Could easily score even if they get well beat. Vishwa says, do you think we're paying too much attention to DEFCON? I don't know how much attention you're paying to it, mate. I can't speak for other people. Raza Saeed says, between Saka and Haaland, who is better captain for 2? Captain for me will be Haaland or Jokeres. Miguel Santos says, should I play Dewsbury Hall or play with back 4, Porro, Estev, Williams, Richards? I'd probably stick Dewsbury Hall in. He's on some set plays and stuff. I'd probably play him over one of the others. Any of them. I mean, that's quite close between those 4. Between that lot, do you know what? If it was me, I'd leave Porro out. But that's not necessarily the right call. Tyler Little says, no Salah. Haaland had 0.5 in the bank. Is Marmoush to Bruno the no-brainer here? Be going Marmoush to Reinders if you don't own. I'd be doing that first. Just leave the money, mate. You're gonna find it easier to get towards Haaland. Shiver19 says, play double Burnley defence or play Sells instead of Dubravka. Yeah, I would go Sells. Tyler does say he has Reinders. That's fair enough. And Frazzle gets the last comment, who says, up the Spurs. And also says, get yourselves on Patreon. Sorry for the inconvenience of the stream there, guys. Something a little bit out of my hands, unfortunately. If you do want to support the show, though, it's www.patreon.com/planetfpl. We've got some great additional content still to come for you, which includes, I think, tomorrow on the quiz with Clayton, possibly the funniest 3 minutes of Planet FPL content of all time. The man makes me laugh so hard that I can't speak. I'm actually in tears crying. So that's a funny one tomorrow. Clayton should be doing a differential show tomorrow as well. Join the community if you want to support the show or you want access to the additional content. Plenty more free content still to come, obviously, as well. Clash of Correspondence tomorrow, as said. Burnley versus Sunderland with Jack Toner and Spencer Barrowman. And on Friday, new podcast, myself and new member of our team, David Hunter, the Weekender, talking about some of the key talking points from this midweek and also having a look at some things ahead of the FPL game week as well. I'm very hopeful, based on how early I got out today, that I will be able to do the deadline stream on Friday. But ultimately, I'm not going to know till I get out of court, basically. So we'll leave it there. Smash a like, hit the sub button, support us on Patreon if you can. For the benefit of those on the audio, 5-star review goes a really long way. And cue music, please, man child.